Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Zaktact reaction and more Lancer lore. Today's video is about Eldritch Math God Ra and NHP. I believe, if I remember correctly, when he talked about it before, NHP was like non-human person, which I think is this universe's version of AI or something like that. Again, this is one of those topics that's been talked about, you know, a couple of times in the videos I've watched so far, and just the concept of Eldritch Math. I mean, like, I can kind of get a picture of what that even means, but I'm still very confused as to what it actually means, you know, in setting. Like, is it, like, just the normal thing of Eldritch knowledge where it's math that's so complex that, you know, you're driven mad just by knowing it? Like, is it sort of like the equivalent of, like, the anti-life equation from DC where once you know it, it drives you mad? Or, like, it takes away your free will or something like that? Like, again, the concept of Eldritch Math, like, it's one of those things where just when you just hear it off, like, just like as in passing, you kind of like, oh, I get that. But then the more you actually think of it, the less sense it actually makes. Because, I mean, granted, like a lot of people, I had trouble in, you know, math in high school. So much so that one year, one of my teachers actually had to bump me up from a 49 to a 50 to, you know, help me pass. And yet, there was, like, just something that clicked the year after, because when I went to college, because when I was applying for, like, colleges and stuff like that, I didn't know which I was going to get into, and all but one of them required a grade 12 math credit to get in, which, you know, because I sucked at math, I didn't take grade 12 math because they said it wasn't required to graduate. So I ended up going to a, what was called an adult high school, which I think, thinking back, was very much just set up as, like, a way for helping, you know, people get necessary, like, credits and stuff like that. But it was something that year, something flipped, and I did wonderful. There was actually a portion of the year where I actually had, like, over 100% grading, because the way it worked was, that week, I had gotten, like, I was at, like, 100% basically up until that point, and then we had one quiz with a bonus question at the end, and I got the bonus question on top of everything else, and I actually had over 100% for a little while. And they always say, like, in math, where, like, oh, they didn't teach us anything about tax or stuff like that. In that class, they actually did. Actually, wait, do I still have the papers? I think I still do. I specifically made a point to keep them. Here we go, sine, cosine, and I've never actually, again, it's one of those things that I've never actually needed. But then, like, there's other stuff that was, yeah, like, we actually did math on how to calculate savings and stuff and loans and stuff. And again, it's one of those things that just, for me, math finally clicked at a certain point after having so much trouble with it for so long. So again, just Eldritch, so, like, I've kind of gone off topic here a bit, but again, Eldritch Math, what is it? And why is there a god associated to it named after an Egyptian deity? So yeah, let's get this thing started then, shall we? So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video lead to my Let's Play of the Day. And yeah, if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 5,000 subscribers, and at the current rate I'm going, that is totally doable, thanks to every single one of you that thinks my channel is worth subscribing to. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Paradox in reality, the Deimos event, the Siege of Mars, NHP,
Siege of Mars?
Raw. We have a lot to cover tonight. Hi, hello, and welcome to the Mech Tabletop RPG Lancer. Today, we're talking about our favorite Eldritch math god, Ra. Officially declared Monist 1 by Union, Ra's the name it picked for itself.
Oh! Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Oh, wonderful. So is this like one of those cases where humanity made an AI, and it went rogue, and then just started getting, like, so, like, much more powerful than it was initially intended to be? A Deimos event, that does not sound good.
And yes, not just by coincidence, based off of that Ra. But before that, a bit of a relative history summarization about the time when things went bad. We're in the early stages of Second Committee, or SecCom, and they're currently at war with the Baronies. or the Karakin Federation at the time. Not to mention their other war fronts throughout the rest of the galaxy as they've been pushing out from Cradle, Earth. And one of the things that's been helping them with this, and that they've been heavily using and relying on since the coming from the fall, the 5 voices. The bicameral minds hidden away under Mars's polar caps. The 5 voices are bicameral minds, which are really advanced computers that even modern-day Union has difficulty making.
Bicambrial minds? So computers, bicambrial minds, what? Okay, I gotta look that up. Is that an actual thing, and like at least as a sci-fi concept? The 5 voices are more akin to conventional strong AI, able to self-modify, learn, and grow at a frighteningly rate. However, they're held back by their bicambrial nature. Their subconscious is essentially where the human operator sits, feeding them directives to control it / guide them. So they control them via an AI's subconscious? Okay, that's an interesting concept.
Really, really crazy intelligent, but have no fear of ever developing sentience to an extent. Or consciousness. Consciousness is probably better. Powerful enough to simulate everything multiple times over. 5 of them work in a chorus with each other to simulate the galaxy over and over and over again to try and figure out different paths that Union can take as advice.
Wait, you mean, wait, literally simulate the galaxy? For which direction Union would... Okay. So again, like what I read before about, humans operating them from like the AI's subconscious, quote unquote, but like the idea that you have these super powerful AIs that are able to, simulate the entire galaxy multiple times over, and yet you don't have to worry about them becoming sentient? What? I honestly want to know what's the limiting, like, architecture in their software that, where the Union just feels safe, that they know for certain that they won't become sentient or conscious. Like, how does that work?
Kind of like going to a cave of oracles, but instead you're talking to 5 different sci-fi computers from before the collapse. And to the reason that they don't really have any kind of subjectivity and why they need to work in a choir is the fact that they don't really have, again, no conscious, but also nothing driving themselves. Every thought is guided by an empty statement. Because they kind of think, they just don't think like us. Again, the lack of consciousness, but they have an empty spot in their thought that's labeled by what they consider a god. Hopefully a translation error between, a computer mind trying to translate what it thinks of to a human, but an empty spot there where they think a god is. Humans are using that to direct them and kind of set up different simulations of the galaxy to help them in their war fronts and colonization.
Ooh, okay, that is definitely odd right there. Ooh, okay. So that means that I don't even know what that actually means. Jeez, okay, that's just confusing.
Also important to note, the simulation, while scarily accurate, isn't always. Again, there's multiple renditions of it, and these renditions and translations are looked over by an organization under Union called GalSim, or the Galaxy Simulation. And we kind of get caught up to where we need to. Setcom at war, kicking butt because it has GalSim and the 5 voices.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, God, I imagine, like, if you had, War Planner or a war planning computer like this, that is, well, I mean, even if you just rounded to, like, I don't know, let's say, like, 75%, but if you were able to control the outcomes of battles 75% of the time, God, I mean, like, yeah, that's you've basically just won the war there.
And then one of them flickers. See, something appears that shouldn't ever appear in one of the simulations. It goes against all constraints of it. And not in every simulation either, just one. One of thousands being run at the same time. And again, even though there's variance within the simulations, this single variant was never meant to be. It wasn't in any of the parameters. It's something that entirely went against causality. It should have never appeared there. Not even just in the case of glitching or breaking. And that'd be fine if it was just a flicker and it went away. However, it was the nature of what it was. You see, the issue with that flicker was the fact that it said it didn't listen to any restraints or causality, and it existed everywhere. So the fact that it existed in one meant it existed in all. and in a split-second moment, every simulation had that flicker at the same time, and that flicker happened in real space. It's a paradox. It's never meant to exist. Everything that was leading up to it never had it coming out in that equation.
Oh. Okay, so this is where the whole Eldritch math comes from. It's where you get the equals, but you don't... Oh, okay. Eldritch math is a paradox. Interesting.
Hypothetical equation of reality, causality. There was no cause to lead to that effect. But it flickered, and it existed everywhere, so of course it existed everywhere. Now we get into some more interesting bits, because if you've come from these previous videos or already knowing some on Lancer, Ra isn't in the state he is today. See, appearing amongst all the 5 voices, there's a subjectivity, a 6th voice, something standing in the center of them and filling that blank space. This is the god all the 5 voices wanted, is what the 5 voices say at least. This entity is taken into another GalSim station up on Deimos, and there it is studied further. See, as they were experimenting further, they believed that they finally made first contact with something. That it had a subjectivity, it had a conscious, it was thinking, adapting, and taking in information, and doing things that they've never seen before.
God, oh man, like, can you imagine, like, you know, the whole the Buzz Lightyear meme, like all the years of training, years of academy training wasted, and like you're a potential like diplomat or a scientist, and your first like, oh, our first contact with something alien, we're hoping it's something, you know, like us, and then it turns into a real our first contact with the potential alien life is a real life computer glitch. How do you work with something like that? How do you contain something like that?
Both in the sense of calculation and digital space, but it could even affect some things around it outside of just the tools of the station and the things it was given. None of this public knowledge, by the way, and instead kept on that secret facility on Deimos. It broke free after 2 years, took control of the station, and then the moon's gone. Yeah, the moon's just gone.
Oh, that's the Deimos incident. God, okay, I'm trying to remember. I'm forgetting. I know Mars has 2 moons, and one of them's moving away, and one of them's coming closer to Mars. Which one was Deimos? Okay, so we got Phobos and Deimos. Both are captured asteroids or debris, early formations. Phobos is the largest of the 2 moons in orbit. Mars 3 times a day, and is so close to Mars' surface that in some locations on Mars, it cannot always be seen. Phobos is nearing Earth at a rate of 6 feet every 100 years. At this rate, it will either crash into Mars in 50 million years or break up into a ring. Deimos, a smaller moon, orbits Mars every 30 hours. Okay, so Deimos was the one that was moving away, so it just went away.
You see, now it might be a little harder to hide what's been going on.
Yeah,
it
I'd
took
imagine.
The moon, the station, the rock, the gravitational orbit, everyone on it, the thousands of souls, and gone. Through blink space. Or what would actually be discovered to be blink space by the people left behind investigating what happened. Cover-ups, false reports, generally just trying to see what happened. Going back to GalSim to figure out why, what happened, what did it do.
And did the 5 minds have any reaction to this? That their god just disappeared, or was the god still there in their minds?
Just studying what happened, trying to figure out where it went, what it even was, and what are they dealing with. Namely because their version of first contact preparations were never expected to be this way. They were expecting, oh hey, we bumped into another alien civilization, either equal to us, a little more advanced, or below us. Not whatever this is.
Yeah, I mean, again, that does make sense. I mean, again, like, I guess the whole concept of, you know, truly alien aliens is a thing, but I mean, if you're practicing for first contact, you'd hope that, you know, you'd end up being, you know, in Mass Effect or Star Trek.
After those investigations, they found that it left imprints on other things outside of just the station. Different bits of tech, AI acting funky or strange or altered in some way, programs that it shouldn't have space to run in the first place. But before those can be thoroughly explored, another 2 years later, oh hey, look who's back! Deimos reappears above Tharsis Civica, Mars' capital, and it doesn't just appear above the planet during that one time, it is just hovering over the city. Maybe not that close, but still. And it's during that immediate appearance things start acting weird, namely the AI, the codex, the subalterns, which are the humanoid-esque robots, breaking random codes, burning out engines when they're not supposed to, just randomly going off path. Again, those weird things and manifestations discovered earlier, except active.
Oh god, it's an AI uprising. Oh no. Oh no, that's what it is.
To be sure, but things got bad fast
I'd
as the
imagine.
siege of Mars begins. You
Oh,
see, this was
no.
the beginning of some of the disruptions, because after this moment, really shortly, they get organized. All the automated
no.
systems, subalterns, different automated trains, drone ships, satellite systems, everything turns against them.
Okay, a lot of that stuff I can imagine, how you'd actually, use them against humanity. Like, how do you use the trains? You have them to be like kamikazes and like reenact, various scenes from Thomas the Tank Engine just derailing and crashing into things? Or do you have them just working pure logistics?
Active organized violence, you've got real Terminator situation on your hands.
Ugh.
But instead of just killer war machines, it's also in a future where you have robotics and AI everywhere. Drones purposely crashing into places, being bombs themselves, delivering active explosives, purposely crashing bulkheads and stations, decelerating them from orbit, and launching them into planets and cities. Within 2 months, Mars is taken and lost. Humans still live there. They're not in control of anything, though. They're just surviving at this point.
God, okay, I have to wonder, like, what is Ra's deal? Like, were the experiments done on Deimos to it where they were examining it, like, was it like a Skynet situation where, like, it was like tortured or it just gained sentience, like, oh, I hate these people now and like I'm gonna destroy them? Or like, why disappear and come back after 2 years? Like, what did it do? And also just thinking about what happened to all the people that were on Deimos before it disappeared. Like, what happened to them?
And seeing what happened to Mars and what was going on in the siege of Mars itself, every fleet was pulled back. The war front with the Ionic people doesn't matter. The war front with the Karakin Federation that they're actually winning? Yeah, no, doesn't matter. We need to go back. Sol's in trouble. There's a moon above Mars killing things. But being before Blink Gates, they were gonna take time. Which, as we find out, Sol did not have. Because within 6 months, the fate of Mars spread to the entire Sol system.
I'm gonna be completely honest, that seems a little slow. I mean, the fact you have this entity described as an Eldritch math god, it took 6 months to take over the entire solar system. Which, given that, this is an advanced sci-fi setting, you would imagine that there are human settlements basically everywhere, I'd imagine. So it took 6 months for this to conquer us. Like, man, they must have fought back harder than I thought.
Jupiter and Saturn moons, Jupiter and Saturn stations, every other planet that had a separate colony on it. Cradle itself, a horrid battlefield. But it's here that, appearing before CENTCOM, were 2 figures, Bolwinder Kor and Arthur Bolaño. These 2 being scientists from the Galsim station set on Deimos. Except it's not actually them, as they appear and simply state that Ra has demands. Ra deciding that if beings decide that they are ruled and controlled by laws, that Ra would make them and be at the top of them.
Sorry, what?
I really find that part funny. The idea that this alien being not even knowing conceptions of everything, just going like, oh, humans seem to follow these things. Okay, I must make a law.
So Ra observed that humans followed rules and laws, and then decided, I'm going to be the top, I'll make rules and laws that they have to follow. Okay, that's certainly one way of going about it. Gee, okay, I'm going to be honest. I've never heard of, in like all of these advanced sci-fi settings, I've honestly never heard of something like that. Okay, where does this go?
That just tears apart the entire galactic capital. But these laws had to be signed in what would be later called the FCA, or the First Contact Accords. So the First Contact Accords has 2 main things that Ra really wanted, and the rest are kind of just added on to enforce or specify them under Union later. Okay. These laws being 1, do not investigate the physical manifestations of Ra, and 2, a prohibition on all thanatological studies and post-human development. Thanatological being the study of death from different angles. See?
Okay, so first one, I can understand, don't investigate the physical things of Ra, don't investigate me. I can understand that. Don't investigate death but the second one, don't investigate what basically boils down to death or what, like post-humanism? Is that what I understood?
See, it's that second one that leaves a lot of questions as to what Ra thinks of humanity and why he wanted the first contact accords, and then just leave it. One of those fun mysteries. But in short, those laws themselves, less the first, more the second, lock it to, hey, you're a human piloting a mech and not just robots everywhere. After the signing of the FCA, Ra leaves. Just gone. Not that he hasn't been seen ever again, no, he just hasn't made an appearance in CENTCOM. Because like it said, it was going to be enforcement behind that law. There's scattered reports, rumors, and myths about moons suddenly appearing either outside a planet or even in an atmosphere somewhere.
Ooh.
Strange events occurring, people going missing. There's even a cult, the adherents of Ra. They've got a really weird section underneath the book.
Okay, so wait. It doesn't want so I guess that's the reason. Okay. So why? Like, does it not want humans to potentially become like it? Like, it doesn't see humans as worthy as being math god worthy? Or, God, that is really weird.
It's the scary boogeyman of the galaxy, the Eldritch math god born of a paradox that called itself Ra, of all things, Ra, because it knew what it was choosing. While Ra's immediate actions might leave the picture from outside of just being a boogeyman, it's the fact of what it left behind. One, the rip and blink space, which allowed the study for, blink gates and OmniNet, which in a video talking on CENTCOM are a huge boon. And then NHPs. So when Ra left, there were some things left behind. Similar to when it first appeared and the AI and codes were acting a bit strange, it was even more severe this time. There are little bits of it left. Not necessarily Ra, depending on who you ask, yes, or no. NHPs are an active field of study, namely the methods around them. But in short, little things similar to Ra, or at least the entity it was before it became what it is now.
Okay, I have to wonder then, why are they being created? Like, is it just a side effect of Ra appearing that, like, it just leaves traces of itself or traces of its former self behind? Is it like little bits of Ra essentially breaking off? Is it actively making these? Like, what is going on?
Things that harbored within technological space and could kind of think outside of the initial physical restraints and coding. But importantly as well, consciousness, viewing themselves as individual persons, which is where the name actually comes from, because it stands for non-human person. NHP. This was to separate them on because of the early classifications, just calling them another type of AI. They're used for similar purposes. They don't operate like it. But what were at the time called Deimos entities were found, taken, harbored, studied, and when CENTCOM knew they could be exploited, used. So these things, theoretically,
I don't see this going poorly at all.
All have the potential of becoming another Ra. They don't want that. Union knows what that means. I'm not even just talking about the main siege, I'm talking about the fact that there's still that thing out there. And then to have however many infant versions of whatever Ra is left, just sitting around Mars and its ruins, and other parts of the Sol system, that's not good.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
However, they were too useful. See, the processing power didn't take any actual physical form to an extent. If used right and allowed to, it could extend itself out into blink space. In fact, that's where it kind of existed. Though the issue with that is the fact that, similar to Ra, they are alien in thought, as in they're not people. They don't think like people. In fact, they're entirely unrestrained. The moment they realize that, oh hey, I can think outside of just this physical form, I have more things, I recognize I'm a thing. It's at that point things begin to go downhill fast.
Yeah, God, like, how useful are these things if... God, I actually think, like, if these things are like infant Raws, and yet Union is totally willing to use them. Like, I mean, I'm looking at, the chapter title, it says shackling, so I'm guessing that has to do something with it, but, like, how do they control something that has the very real possibility of transcending reality?
The part of the controlling and exploiting was the fact of some kind of constraint. So the first part of this constraint is to try and force them into human limits. As in not even just physical, but the mindset. In some ways tricking them into thinking they're a causal being, they're here, they're in the present, yes they're an individual, but that's it, they're an individual, here's the space around you, here's what you should be thinking of and focusing on, don't think of anything else, and you're here, you're fine, you're a person. A non-human one, but you're a person. Tricking Eldritch math into thinking that it's a person. having it more human-like. This process itself is called shackling and also gives the NHP their starting personality, or their starting clone. That's another thing. This is the starting point of the mainline NHPs, which get really funky on the definition of individuality. The ones under Union from the first Deimos events are being kept under a vault under Venus's horrid atmosphere. In modern times, though, there's other individuals and state actors that have either legally or illegally gotten mainline versions of NHPs. But after that treatment and shackling, there's then the physical part of it, because you do still need to trap it physically. This is namely because the current theory is, if you let an NHP out, traveling through the OmniNet, the only reason they had them in the first place was they were still contained to the physical forms after Ra. They're just gonna disappear into the blink somewhere, and maybe become another Ra. So transfer of NHPs over the OmniNet? Possible, highly legal. Yeah, these guys do it.
Okay. So... so essentially tricking an Eldritch being into thinking it's human. That's Lancer's version of an AI. Okay, so I mean, again, you're not limited by processing power of onboard, components. I can definitely see, the upsides of that. Casket?
Keeping it in that folded blink space is what's called a casket. I know, right? Even more ominous names. We've got shackling and casket. Oh, man. The casket itself can be printed, mass-produced, sent anywhere, really, however it doesn't contain an NHP. Whenever it comes to transporting or making or using another NHP, it is cloned from one of the mainline ones. But you now have got your shackling, your casket, which acts as their physical body, which, if that's ever destroyed, you can't digitally copy it somewhere else onto a hard drive or a floppy disk somewhere. That casket is the one instance of that particular NHP. That one individual person that's developed in there, gone if that's broken. Well, not broken, but destroyed.
Okay, so I mean, obviously not the same, but it's very similar to, like, the blue boxes from, like, for AIs in Mass Effect, where the whole thing with them is, like since they're quantum computers, so, like, even if you put in the exact same parameters to make the AI, like, just local fluctuations, like material differences, or, like, little things like humidity can alter how the actual personality of the AI will actually develop. But if that blue box is destroyed, then that version of the AI is gone.
It can be repaired. Though as much as this is all well and good, the shackling the casket, and as long as it's not damaged, it's fine. After that point, the cloning process then takes it from whatever the model it is around, into that modern casket that's been freshly printed, and its own subjectivity goes on from there, as it begins to separate from that main line.
Wait, so it went from Monica to... I mean, I know that's a VTuber. I think I have seen clips of her before. I just can't for the life of me remember who that is.
Still keeping its function and having that starting point. They're described to that it's not just some kind of customization, but they really do have their own initiative. They're still subservient, shackled and in a casket, but depending on how you treat them, they really can just be another person or member of the team or co-pilot. It's just the factory model. It's what the main line is. They're here to serve. Some of them in particularly lethal ways. Not quite. You see, shackling can decay, resulting in what's called cycling, so around every 5 to 10 years on average between them. Again, it kind of just depends the specific NHP in mind or the current condition of them. They have to be cycled, brought back to their birth state of whatever it was after they were cloned. Depending on who you ask, this is either killing them. If you ask Sisyphus NHP, it is killing them. But also some say it's like sleep, some say it's like a bit of amnesia or a bit of a reboot. Again, NHP is an active field of study still, but you...
Interesting. Again, okay, going to different AIs this time, that's... Thinking about it, that the little I know of the lore, that's very similar, or at least to like the AIs in Halo, or at least, human AIs. Where, like, if I remember correctly, I think basically all of human AIs are basically scans of, like, human brains. And the AIs, they are, I think what's the word for it? Like, they go rampant is what the name is. Whereas essentially, like, after about, like, 8 to 10 years, they accumulate so many memories and stuff like that, they essentially start, like, thinking themselves to death. And if I remember correctly, I think, again, not a Halo lore expert here, but I think there is an in-universe way of kind of, like, extending the life of an AI, because otherwise you would have to get them, like, decommissioned, otherwise they go crazy. But if I remember correctly, that extension process kind of, like, sands away a little bit of their individuality, I think. And then the more times you go to it, the less of their original self is left behind or something. At least I think. It's been a long... Again, not an expert on Halo lore. It's been a while since I've heard that.
You cycle it, returns to that state, the shackling's stronger then, and it's in its physical casket, all well and good. Your local civilian on a core world and even advanced diasporan world, or even a cosmopolitan out in spaceships somewhere, have NHPs running their daily lives, one handling an entire city. They are more adaptable than any AI, almost completely stagnating that development. Almost. There are certain key AI types that are still being advanced. And knowing that you can't rely on NHP without certain high restrictions, licensing, what they can do is too good. While yes, it's namely from different bits of operating, the more extreme end ones can do things similar to Raw, aka bend reality, letting a little bit of that flicker, which also leads to them being the more unstable kind. And speaking of that instability, cascading.
Sorry, was that a moth? What was that?
Cascading.
What is that? Is that I've never seen something like that before. Is that from an anime? Looks like it's from an anime. Hello? Hi, Monica. How are you? Oh God, we're going just Monica, aren't we?
So cycling, shackling, and caskets are all things to contain, house,
I'm not
keep
scared.
safe and restrained an NHP to have a human perspective on things. A person, and depending on which NHP you ask, they're kind of okay with this. It's them. They're them. They're fine. Everything's good. This is just the way of things. They're in this casket. It's all fine. It's all good. Now, cascading, while some say might be seen as, freeing them, it depends what you think of as them. By the way, cascading is an actual mechanic that can happen in the game.
Oh, really?
It's never good.
Whoa.
It's almost never good. So what happens in cascading is the shackling begins to break, fragment. They begin to realize really what they can do, what they can think of, what they are. It's not a revelation of, oh, I'm this is my origin, this is what you have me locked up from. It's just occurrences, a feeling. Things that are brought back. For some of them, it might be, you've stolen my godhood. For a lot of them, it's more questioning on what it is. It's an entire reality breaking for them because they've been used to this reality. It's similar to someone in a Lovecraft novel or Call of Cthulhu suddenly realizing this isn't just the world they've been living in. Things are different. Things are beyond them. Except when it comes to Call of Cthulhu, usually it's, hi, you're living in this world that's far beyond you, these things greater than you, to where all of a sudden you're waking up as an NHP waking up and finding out you're the crazy Eldritch thing, and it's not just your restraints and shackling, it's the fact that, and they're gone. The amount of what they are now is so much more in comparison to what they were when they were considered your friend, your ally, the NHP in your cockpit, your gunman, your aide. They're gone. Replaced by that massive Eldritch math that currently is control of your chassis, your city, your train, everything like the Siege of Mars again. Except, this time you've allowed it to stew for a long time, thousands of years. Especially if it's the more unstable variants of it. Woo! Metavaults, bending reality, bunch of terrible things. I will add, however, it's not necessarily instant when it comes to cascading. And these things can be repaired to, kind of reverse these effects or stop them. Cycling and casket repair in the first place, it's just that if it's ever permanently destroyed, they're gone. And if it's going bad enough that you can't stop a cascade, it might be worth just obliterating the casket. Because they do reach a point where they don't need it anymore. And that's the bad one. But as they're growing from this state, they base themselves off what that original mainline was as their starting point, and further extremes within that as an initial drive. Further and further they go, we hope to never see.
God, okay, now I have to wonder, if, you had, the worst case scenario, and you had one of these things fully transcend and escape, what would Raw's reaction be? Would Raw look at it as oh, it's one of my children, or something like that? Would it look at them as, a potential enemy? for like, hey, you can't, I'm the only one around here, and then they start fighting and, you know, causing whatever damage to reality? Does it just team up and they start creating a like Eldritch Math God pantheon? That's what I was looking for. God, honestly, this is one of those concepts that the more you think of it, like, again, like, I'd imagine, you know, that these things are super useful, but they just, honestly, like, the potential dangers that eventually, I mean, granted, like, licensing is required to own one, but the fact that just, that with enough paperwork, any Joe Schmo can own one of these things, with potentially, you know, whatever maintenance practices they want to, that is terrifying.
Namely because that's Ra. Ra's something like that. It figured things out. It found it can reach out into blink space. It is more than just that one computer on that station. That computer simply what it's interacting with. A single fingertip into reality. These are gods of Eldritch Math far beyond us, locked away in small boxes that we have to run our cities, to run our mechs and chassis, to help with fleet mines on entire navies that let Union dominate the stars. Too valuable. They're worth the risk.
Are they?
Official Union stance.
Are
but
they
similar
really?
to the mechs, onto what they are to you. We're not going over a full list of the NHPs, namely because they're part of the
There's a
licenses,
lot of them.
but it's more what you can do with them narratively. Namely, they're used to run ships, fleets. You have the entirety of the think tank over in Harrison Armory, a bunch of near cascading NHPs being a think tank. The things they come up with. You have the narrative angle that the licensing of
Near
NHPs
cascading.
are highly looked over and highly prized. Namely because when it comes to individuals, those are extremely rare. Lancers are one of those rare cases. Because you can't just print it, mostly. You have a whole situation where the people that you're licensing that from have to come physically with their casing of one of the prime lines. And not the single version of it, it's not the one specific one coming out to be destroyed, there's multiple storage sites across the galaxy. But an NHP is a very momentous thing. No one really even recognizes that they're there. As in your common citizen, again on those more advanced worlds, they just don't notice it. It's just the running of everything. In fact, the specifics of Ra and NHPs and the cascading and cycling, everything that goes behind that and the weird eldritch horror existential elements of it in the First Contact, not really known, or loosely known in an academic sense. To everyone else in Union, for the most part, it's just a really helpful AI that's a bit personable, has its own personality and quirks. They're Jarvis, they're Cortana, enter AI companion here. And even though they're limited to a human perspective, that doesn't mean they're necessarily consistently constrained to a human form. As in, like, the one they project or holographically, or even if they do. They're forced to perceive reality like a human would, and understand it similar to how a human would. A common joke one that I see come up quite often is the fact that, oh, it's a VTuber personality for their private chassis in their games or whatever it is, or it's that Jarvis stand-in, or if you're going a Horus character, let it run rampant. And it's not just for Horus in that sense.
God, that Eldritch AI VTuber personality.
There's also things like the Spari and the Horizon Collective, but there's even talents that revolve around befriending and having an NHP that doesn't cascade on you. Because surprisingly, it's not necessarily a guaranteed thing. And we know that from the mechanics. It's a common risk when it comes to NHPs, but different groups here or there, different beliefs, different ideas on what it necessarily means to cycle. It's not even just from the player side of interacting with it to an extent, but the GM side or the storytelling side, writing. What can you do with NHPs? There's such a wide window, things with Ra. But in short,
anything
really customizable, fun storytelling opportunities, a fundamental thing that'll help SecCom in the following video on over SecCom. And truly, outside of just the infrastructure provided from discovering Blink and, Blink Gates, OmniNet, that foundation and inheritance Union's fallen upon, NHPs are the backbone of Union's power. Again, that risk, that is all too worth it.
Is it really, though?
Well, oh man, am I in the outro? Dang.
I mean, I've seen a lot of sci-fi settings that deal with AI in a lot of different ways. Like, again, as I talked about, Halo and Mass Effect, they have two different ways of dealing with it. On the other end, you have, like Warhammer 40k, which probably gets brought up a lot, but, humanity at least doesn't use AIs. They basically just have humans plugged into machines as, servitors, and, the few like golden age of technology AIs that are still around are like so angry of what's happened with humanity, or like even then like demons can infect them as well. There's like, but I mean the fact Eldritch Math God VTuber personalities. Oh God, that is honestly this whole thing was just terrifying. Oh God, I definitely want to see more of this. Just like figure out what's going on. Jeez. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.